From Stuck to Scaled, Growth Strategies for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses, your guide to navigating growth, transformation, and success in today's ever-changing business landscape. Each week, we'll dive into proven strategies, real-world case studies, and actionable insights designed to help small and mid-sized business owners scale smart, lead stronger, and grow faster. Let's get you unstuck and on the path to sustainable, scalable success. Now your host, Julio Gonzalez.
Welcome back to From Stuck to Scaled. I'm your host, Julio Gonzalez. When you think of a law firm, tech stack probably isn't the first phrase that comes to mind. But today's guest has built a multi-state, seven-figure boutique law firm by pairing deep legal expertise with smart, practical technology choices. Joining us is David D.J. Holt, healthcare attorney and founder of Holt Law. Known as the Surgeon of Attorney, DJ specializes in highly specific practice areas and partners with other experts to deliver a one-stop shop experience for his business owner client. In this episode, he's pulling back the curtain on the actual tech stack that powers his firm's rapid growth and where AI tools like Google Gemini and NotebookLM are providing real, measurable value. Welcome, David.
Hey, how's it going?
Good to have you on the podcast. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, David Holt, founder, owner at Holt Law. So we're the law firm built for healthcare businesses. We are only working with healthcare businesses, healthcare professionals, and their legal transactional work. So thinking like doctors, mental health professionals, treatment centers, surgical centers, that sort of thing. That's really all we do. And really more of a business owner than an attorney here with our staff of over 30 now, but run the whole gambit of those services.
And I love the fact of how much technology you've built into your firm and AI. So tell us a little bit about, what you're doing, how you've put in some automation.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was dumb luck or we just got lucky in terms of our origin, but by way of background, I was originally biomedical engineering in undergrad. So I'd like to say tech savvy. We were coding medical devices and working with, MATLAB back in the day is what it was to connect the devices over to the computers. I think MATLAB's still around. And anyway, I didn't have any attorneys in the family, and I launched the firm right out of school. And right out of the gate, I said, listen, this is going to be a tech savvy law firm. And so what that meant was paperless at the time. I'd still meet with clients, but it was paperless. That was kind of a big thing back in 2013 still, scanning documents, not having big paper things. And I think from there, it really evolved, I'll admit, just to kind of fit my lifestyle, traveling a little bit more. And although I really enjoyed having the in-person relationships with clients, dinners, coffee, what have you, I realized I could kind of do that selectively. And that didn't have to be, you didn't have to do business, right, to make the law firm work. And so well before COVID came, and then really that's what accelerated it, I think, for a lot of people, the pandemic is
absolutely
going remote, had a lot of technology in place and have really had that as a core fundamental tenet of the firm.
And so you started with going paperless, and where did you go from there?
Yeah. So all lawyers or law firms kind of struggle with, like, what is our core file management software? So I still to this day, I'm a big Google guy. I don't get any, kickbacks or referral fees. We just run on the G Suite system.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of knew in college, and that's what I liked. They were HIPAA compliant. And although a lot of the lawyers kind of gravitated towards these kind of made for you lawyer platforms, I always ask kind of the why do we use this in the first place? And also for where we were going, can other softwares communicate with G Suite well? And the answer was yes. There was a lot of integrations. Generally, G Suite works very well with others through Zapier or Zapier. I always say it's got to be one of those two. I don't know.
I say Zapier because it's a zap.
It's a zap, yeah, right.
Yeah.
You zap people, you don't zape. So
That's
okay. And So at the beginning, that was, we'll just say software number one. And from there, what we did was we layered on software based on what was its core function. Okay. If it was scheduling, what was the best in the industry? Was it Calendly? Was it something else? And can it communicate with our other systems? If it's invoicing, if it's CRM, so developing or managing the client relationships. And fast forward to today, right? As I think any small business owner knows, if you have to switch a system, it's a big pain in the butt, because you got to get off the old system without breaking things, and especially without losing confidential files for professionals. And right now, our director of operations, currently Caitlin, she does a great job. And I say, anytime we're going to switch a software, that's a big deal. So now, based on where we're going, anything you pick, it's got to pass the $100 million test. So if we pick this and kind of where we're going and where we see we're going right now, can we keep this all the way to the moon, so to speak? We didn't have that decision-making ability at the beginning, right? It's more of a, convenient survival of sorts. Yep. So that's where it's at now.
Yeah, I'm in the midst of switching my CRM, and that's a challenge. And my CRM has my website in it, and the website has the blog in it. And I had to make the decision, I'm just going to abandon my blog, because I post in multiple locations. So everything that's in my blog is also on LinkedIn. So I made the decision, just, my blog menu item on the website points to my LinkedIn page, to the articles. And that's going to save me, a post going forward. And it's less to worry about in terms of migration. Because so many of those things don't really migrate easily. You can migrate your customers and invoices and things like that, but a blog is not something that there's a heck of a lot of tools out there to migrate. So it's pretty manual. So yeah, that $100 million decision is a big, measure and a good one to help drive that decision making. Talk to me a little bit about AI, because AI in the legal space has become huge. We've seen some cases where attorneys have been, I'll say reprimanded, because I don't know what the appropriate term is, for using cases that AI made up. So how are you using AI and more broadly in the legal space? Talk to me about AI.
Yeah, we're definitely a tech forward firm, and you wouldn't be one if you didn't utilize the tools AI. So we're in September of 2025. So there have been some attorneys that have been disciplined for using and citing cases that didn't exist. And they found those because they used AI tools that effectively what we've learned in the most recent versions of AI tools, according to those that create them, is they believe they've figured out why the AI tools were hallucinating. And I'm going to paraphrase greatly and not make this very techy, but effectively before, allegedly, the AI tools, they really wanted to make you happy and find solutions. And so if, for example, for the poor attorneys that said, hey, AI, go win this case for me, if the case law didn't exist, it's like a dog that just can't say no to it. So it just made stuff up, and it would do it in a very convincing way with fake cases with citations perfect. And that's bad. That is, you got to check your own work. You cannot, anything you sign as a lawyer and submit, you're held to a very high standard. So those attorneys, unfortunately, were, as first adopters, paid the penalty. Today, just recently in the, I think it's a ChatGPT 5, but we run largely on the G Suite tools again. So Gemini.
Yeah.
What the AI tools will do, which I think is a good lesson for humans as well, is when they don't know, they'll simply say they don't know. So even with all their perfect AI power and superhuman abilities, if the case doesn't exist and they just can't win, they'll get it as far as they can, and then for the rest they'll say, you know what, human, I don't know. I just, that prompt, it just didn't work for me, which I think It's smart. It's a it was a good fix. Now we'll see in the next wave of cases, and I'm sure all over LinkedIn in the comments there, people seem very opinionated on LinkedIn, which I like. I like getting involved in those discussions for, AI this and AI that. Now, but at our firm, we use the G Suite tools. So largely those are Gemini and NotebookLM. Gemini is just going to be your chat GPT, put stuff in with good prompts, output comes out. There's images, there's videos. For a law firm, largely that's going to be assisting with legal advice, drafting routine policies and procedures. We do that every day. Draft or analyzing a factual scenario and providing not legal advice, because that needs to be provided by an attorney, but basically hand feeding that to the attorney. There's no doubt that that's being done. NotebookLM, slightly different. It's a closed universe. This morning I was using NotebookLM for 2 different cases. One of them, a client has just a long history and a list of medical claims. They're the provider that they've been submitting to the insurance company. The insurance company is denying them. And so now it's a very heavy technical back and forth. About 3 years ago, if I actually had to read through all those with my paralegal, with my assistants, with myself, that could be a week of like hard 40-hour weeks and tabbing pages and highlighting stuff. Think of like Mike Ross from Suits, or like I'm talking like highly organized labor. Whereas I threw it into NotebookLM, it was about 200 different documents, including emails going back and forth for multiple years. And NotebookLM was able to not only put together a nice coherent summary of what was going on, but specifically cite, which I could click, where it said, I came to this conclusion, or on, February 5th, 2023, provider said X, and you can click on that and actually confirm. So it's like easy to verify. Mm-hmm. That's a great use for attorneys when they're getting dumped all sorts of files on. There's just really no reason outside of maybe, hallucination, concerns that I think attorneys should not be using it. So those are just 2 use cases at our firm so far. There's a few others too.
I did play initially with NotebookLM, and I was floored because when it was presented to me, it was, NotebookLM can create a podcast for you. So I took, one of my podcast scripts, threw it into NotebookLM, and it created 2 voices. It expanded from an idea to an entire conversation. And I'm listening to this thing saying, oh my God, this is insane. It was a fantastic conversation. It took a female voice and a male voice. So they were bantering back and forth. And it was like, this is crazy. Such an incredible tool. And I haven't done anything else with it. I keep meaning to go back, but you get stuck on one tool, and that's habit. So I need to go out of my way to go play with NotebookLM.
Yeah, we're big fans. So, outside of just, good old fashioned, I'm a lawyer trying to provide legal advice or put together massive factual scenarios just to get down to the core things that I need. Any business, forget lawyers, just any business with NotebookLM could do quality control. So we do record all of our client communications. We use Zoom, and then now we have a recording, and then the AI comes in and it's the transcript. Some people get annoyed with those AI note takers, but they are very useful because we will turn around and feed those video recordings and the transcripts into NotebookLM. And we'll ask NotebookLM to look for things like patterns, or if a client is upset, or largely to quality control what our attorneys or paralegals are saying. So, if overtime is after 40 hours, but for some reason the attorney said 20, we can just have rules in the background, kind of just basic quality controls that make sure that little things like that are caught. Or let's say you can hear in the sentiment of a voice that is recorded that the client is pissed off, right? But unfortunately, the attorney, we're up in Minnesota sometimes, in Minnesota, California, but we got a lot of Minnesota nice, and that's just how we were raised, the Scandinavian, it's tough to kind of, say how you feel. And so maybe the client was upset with the attorney, but the attorney didn't let the firm know, didn't let me know. And I'm obviously concerned about our malpractice and reputation. NotebookLM would be a tool that could run in the background and just monitor for that. So quality control is one of many tools. Plus, if you really want to get fancy, you can have, let's say you had an intake call. I'm sure, any business is doing sales or intake calls.
Yeah.
If you put that recording in and put a nice prompt on top of it, it could tailor your response, specifically talking about, I got a new puppy, but it would probably say, your puppy, Bruno, was a very nice, it would really personalize it and make sure that you captured on top of maybe your sales philosophy is, customer is the hero. So we use that as kind of our overarching framework. So those are examples that would apply to everyone, not just law firms, for NotebookLM use.
I want to go back because you've mentioned hallucinations a couple of times, and this is something that I've talked a lot about with customers. People don't understand that the AIs hallucinate, and they're like, "What? What do you mean?" Share a little bit about how you've experienced hallucinations and what these hallucinations are.
Yeah, we've seen it a little bit. We just got the new Gemini, right? We've been playing with that for the ultra, basically the ChatGPT 5 version, we'll say. But we had some as an early adopter, we did see about a year ago that AI would effectively, it just really wanted to impress you with its answers. So it was saying things that it wasn't citing where it was figuring it out from. And unfortunately, what it would also do, a Gemini will grab from the internet. And so, back to your blog, anyone can write a blog. Lawyers can write blogs. Lawyers can write things that are incorrect in their blogs. And then that gets fed into the Gemini engine. And if enough blogs say something that's incorrect, now that becomes a truth for AI. So I noticed that, although not all the way to a hallucination, Gemini was picking up, what looked like reputable blogs and kind of pitching it in a way that was incorrect, because it just really wanted to give me, I was demanding, give me a firm answer, yes or no, and cite your sources. And so that's where we saw it really having issues for lawyers. And that's where we took a little more pause and we did more quality control on top of, all right, good old fashioned law school. What is the actual source of the truth? Ideally, all the way back to the statute, or, Department of Labor can comment on labor law, some sort of authority. And now we've put a few more quality control mechanisms in place on top.
Yeah, I've experienced it a couple of times, trying to work through ideas. And, I'll start with, help me figure whatever out. And, as you continue the conversation, sometimes it just goes down this like really weird path. And it's like, no, let's bring it back over here. And it can't. So breaking it, when it starts going down the wrong way, is practically impossible. And you have to kind of like start a whole new thing. And sometimes it lets it go and other times it doesn't. But I helped a friend who's a realtor come up with a prompt for analyzing market stats, right? Because realtors are big on, how's the market performing. And every month he'd sit there and download the latest stats and, do his calculations and figure out what he wanted to say in his newsletters and stuff. And it was a lot of work. So, we sat down and spent, a good amount of time together and came up with a really strong prompt. And one of the key things in the prompt is using only the information provided and not making anything up, do all of this stuff. And that completely transformed the results from the initial prompts that we were working on. So prompt writing is critical. And a lot of people don't understand, that how critical prompt writing is. And I'll give you another example. A gentleman in one of my chamber leads groups, he's a marketing guy, and he's accustomed to literally drawing out storyboards for commercials. So, literally scene by scene, they would draw it out. And when they went to record, they would use that as the reference. Well, guess what? He puts together these amazing chat GPT prompts because he's accustomed to having to, no pun intended, but frame it out for, filmographers and stuff like that to get the scenes that he wants. So, being as clear, as prescriptive, as descriptive as possible is severely important if you want the right outcome from any AI.
I agree. I don't think prompt engineering is going away anytime soon. Some of our best prompts that we use internally, and I've started to share these publicly. Maybe that'll be one of my takeaways. But our best prompts internally over here are 2 to 3 pages long. Is the prompt to prep just and it's saying things like, listen, if you don't have enough information, please ask for more. And like you said, stay within the parameters. Don't get all creative. This is a legal search, not, we're not drawing a picture or something. So the prompt itself, I think, is huge because, well, it goes back to the engineering days, garbage in, garbage out. If your prompt is bad, your prompt that you're putting in, if that's garbage or not well articulated, the machine, if it's perfect, the code's perfect, whatever, for the medical device referencing, if you coded everything to be correctly, if you put the input in bad, even the perfect machine cannot fix that. So we call that garbage in, garbage out in engineering. Same is true here with just basic code, the Gemini, ChatGPT, Gronk, whatever you're using. The machine itself could be just ready and willing, but if you just give no context, you're not giving any, specific directions, the formatting, the scope, your target audience, all that fun stuff. The prompts are everything right now.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they're like, "Oh, prompt writers are going to be out of a job in the next, 12 to 18 months because now you have." It's like, no. We're not ready to get rid of prompt writing anytime soon. There's still too much learning. It may be quick, but there's still too much learning that needs to take place. I recently presented a chat. I was invited to present on AI, and I did the practical uses of AI. So talked about AI at an enterprise level, at a small business level. One of the things that I brought up many times was Gamma. There's all kinds of other presentation types of tools out there where you can either give it an outline or you can just describe, like most other AIs, what you want. And that's a great small business tool. What are some of those practical tools that anybody can use beyond just the Gemini and the Chat GPT that you may have implemented or you recommend?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Gamma. What I'm seeing actually separate than the independent tools right now is just making use of the tools, software that you're already using, and they're layering AI on top. But, they probably didn't do the best job telling you, hey, actually, if you just kind of use the feature, we use HubSpot. And okay, I'll do a different one, ClickUp. So we use a task management software. It's called ClickUp. Independently, we were kind of searching around for, what else could we use AI tools wise to, really look at our tasks and do all that. Lo and behold, kind of as the wave is working right now in the end of 2025, ClickUp had its own AI integration already inside of the tool. We didn't see that. We're doing actually one of our rocks, because we run on the EOS model, is just a good tech audit of everything that's happened in the last 6 months that we haven't noticed feature-wise in software that we're already using. So I would say, I'll take this in a slightly different direction. Software that you're already using, I highly suspect has, just because of the competitive landscape, added some features and maybe not done the best job of, maybe you unsubscribe from the emails or whatever of really marketing them, or you just been bombarded with AI. I would at least say experiment with those, reach out to their support and say, hey, can you walk me through how this might make my work that I already have, all this invoicing and stuff with you, work a little bit better. So I do this too. And I'm not saying that's what any of your listeners are doing, but there's a temptation to go and find the next big AI tool and like quickly
Shiny
get it
object.
in. Yeah, shiny object. But you'd be surprised if you just poke around in your current tech stack, how many of those have overlaid their own useful AI, and it's already on top of integrated. You're already signed in and paying for it for one that you're already using.
That's a great point, because I did bring that up in my presentation, and it's something that I talk to my customers a lot about. In a previous podcast recording, somebody asked, "Oh, what CRM do you recommend to your customers?" And it's like, the one that they use. Maximize the value of what you're using. The a CRM in and of itself is generally not going to be a significant boom or bust to your business. It's whatever tools you're going to use. And you're absolutely right. With as much as technology has been evolving to add AI to everything, look at your existing tools rather than just looking for that next shiny object. And that's a great segue to going back more financial. You brought up that $100 million decision. How do you look at cost and value when making some of these technology decisions?
Yeah, well, it's more about value, right, than cost. So I'll admit there are some expensive tools, especially when you get up there a little bit, but they enable all sorts of different revenue streams, or the time to close can greatly shrink, the ability to upsell, also looking at the value, not just the cost. Because if I actually line by line, when we do when we audit our tech stack, the Zapier and the HubSpot I know is up there, they're pretty expensive. We pay out some pretty large monthly or yearly fees for those, gladly, because the ROI and the value on those is insane. And so as I would with tech, as I would with consultants, or hiring coaches, professionals, it's going to be value, not cost. It's very tempting. It's very, very tempting to compete on cost. But here's the other thing too. Yes, okay, it's a little more expensive, it's better value, but you have to think about both the onboarding and the breakup costs. And what I mean by that, when I was talking a little earlier with the $100 million test, is if you have to switch software, that takes so much labor time. So that's your staff that have to learn it and waste time just pivoting to a new software. You have to implement. Usually there's client disruption. All the time that you go back and forth getting out of the previous vendor relationship and into the new one, people almost always forget how much that's worth. And that's time, if you're the owner, the visionary, your time is way up there, 10,000 an hour, whatever. If you want to quantify it, you can't be, we saved $100 here or there on the whatever software. That it's just, at some point, it's all value. It's all value, no cost. So, but it takes a little while to get there.
And yeah, the end value, I also throw in, or I build in total cost of ownership, right? Because too many people only look at what their cost is, and not the cost necessarily to operate. Because you may be purchasing, let's call it, a great tool that delivers great value, but if it means that you have to hire 5 people to run it, it may not be the right tool for you. So you do need to look beyond just the product, because there's a lot more that goes into it. I always tell people, if you can't afford the oil change, don't buy the Ferrari.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I can think of one we had pretty early on, and um, it not only did you have to buy the people to kind of run it, it's also there's kind of the endless upsell, not necessarily bad in just as a general principle, but it was interesting as to how you had to buy three other things just to make the core component work. So it was the base cost was not really true, but that was the one that everyone fixated on.
Yeah.
And I'll even go a step further, with kind of the lawyer engineering brain, is when I'm approaching a vendor relationship or a professional relationship. I mean, I don't know why more of my clients don't take me up on this, but I really think you should, speak to those who have had a great experience with that person, and also just ask for some results. That's not, there's Google reviews, we have a bunch of Google reviews. Yay. But, I love when prospective clients say, hey, do you have anyone in a similar situation that's been through this whole transaction, paid about what we're looking to pay, that we could chat with? Yeah, we do. And obviously those might be, slightly handpicked, but at the same time, if even that is tough for them to do and produce and talk about, I have some concerns. So it's really getting to the source of, all right, you say you're the best. How do I know that as a truth for a vendor?
And every product is the best for somebody.
Yeah.
Right. So it's important to understand, how you use it versus how I plan to use it. Because, your favorite product may not be a great fit for me. And it may not be because you're an attorney and I'm a business consultant. It might be, you're, healthcare related attorney and I'm an immigration attorney. And for whatever reason, they're not a good fit. So it's not just a practice or industry type of situation. You need to understand your operational flows and your needs. So that's some additional consideration. You talked that you decided to go tech early on. What were some trigger points or decision points that you latched onto, let's say, that drove you to the next level in technology, that some of our listeners might need to keep an eye on?
Yeah. Well, I suppose frustration was a big motivating factor early in my law practice. I'm a newly minted attorney, and I'm driving around to clients, or I'm meeting with them over in Minnesota, and it's the middle of winter, and you set up all these meetings, and you're getting up early and ready to go and getting ready, get your coffee, go out there, and there's last minute cancellations, and there's just kind of a less of a it's so much easier to be able to reschedule, a Zoom or a video call,
Sure.
or do something digital, as opposed to physically get you all the way there. So for me, it was lifestyle. I had a son, and that just said, all right, there is a competition for your time now. You can't just drive or go all the way into an office and maybe slowly and methodically get home after, a client meeting or dinner, what have you. There is, you got a son, so you can't, you got to be more methodical with your time. So that meant I said, all right, well, that plus the ability to travel, I saw that I didn't have a choice. It was remote, and that was the way we were going to go. It also, a lot of the work that I did by design and by reflection and talking to litigation attorneys who I love, and I'm sure most of them love their work, but to the ones that I talk to, very stressful, very deadline driven, very in-person focused to go to a hearing or a deposition or what have you. That wasn't for me. I really enjoy the flexibility and freedom of transactional work. And so it was really just a reflection of me, myself, and probably for any business owner, an opportunity to reflect and say, okay, if my lifestyle or my family life or my hobbies are this, where can work still fit into that and I can be happy? And for that, it just meant we're going to be virtual. And I thought that everyone would say, oh, well, I need to meet my attorney and look him in the eyes and shake his hand and, have a coffee with him. And that was not the case at all. In fact, we attracted a whole nother set of people that had, sometimes, barking dogs and crying kids in the background. But that was me, it was like me talking to me, just a different version of me. And so it worked out great. And I realized that we didn't have to do the things that the way they've always been done. The old school practice of law, meeting in the office downtown in this like big expensive building that you're paying for, by the way. It's not like they're paying for it. And it worked. It worked. So the touch point or the decision point was a reflection on, well, I guess the decision was forced with the birth of a child, but ultimately just lifestyle, what I wanted the lifestyle to be, and then building the virtual remote practice around that.
And to make that, maybe a little bit clear for our listeners that may not be getting it, where are you spending your time that you don't need to be, that you can offload that to a technology, to an employee, because you don't need to do it all and you can't do it all. So, where can you buy back your time so that you can focus on what you should be focusing, which in David's case is, one of his priorities was family, but for many business owners, it's growth. So where do you need to focus your time and hire and, buy to support freeing up your resources?
Yeah. Delegating. And I mean, it's interesting because it's such a tough exercise. It's so easy to say, so hard to do. Even after you've done it for 5-10 years, to get to the next level, to really take another step back, it's layers of the onion, layers of the delegating, and layers of the, trusting others in the positions as you move your way up and out. And it's not about you. It's not about Holt meeting with the person and shaking their hand. It's about the process that has been replicated and can continue to be replicated if Holt is with son at Disney World for, offline for 3 weeks or what have you.
Yeah. And, we're creatures of habit. And that's why it's important to set aside time on a monthly or quarterly basis to reevaluate the things that you're doing. In your case, you're reevaluating tools, but I'm sure you're also reevaluating processes. And I think it's incumbent on everybody, whether you're an individual or a business owner, to really rethink, everything that you're doing, your approaches and your goals, because, they often need to change.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
So, David, as you know, no one leaves the show without providing some actionable tips our listeners can implement today to improve their business. So what do you have for our listeners?
Yeah. So number one, I am going to get you, and we'll put it in the show notes, the prompts that I was talking about. So I will provide some of the prompts, not legal advice, but some of the prompts that we use internally for our AI tools that they can run with, some of which are going to be quite long, purposely so, to build off of what I was talking about there before. Secondly, I'm going to, I would say, similar to what we kind of hit there at the end, is take time to really reflect on, it's so easy to say, hard to do, but reflect on the lifestyle that you want to build with the business that you're doing. And I think that would involve a lot of engaging consultants like yourself and or delegation, because personally, that has done wonders for my life and bought so much time back with my son, my family, and my friends. Last one, I know we talked a lot about tech and tech stacks and softwares. One thing I would say is, if you're looking at your current tech stack, and this will be my last one, if you're looking at your tech stack, similar to that reflection you just did about your lifestyle, also do a reflection about what are the things that you need done, as opposed to, looking at the software first. So for example, if it was, gosh, the thing that we spend a lot of time is rescheduling of meetings. Okay, so that is the solve or the issue that we're looking for a software for, and focus on why you're trying to get the software first. And I'll I'll say from my experience, usually the one that says they can do everything is not the best choice. It's the ones that do one thing very well but can communicate with the others. So that's what I'll say.
And David, how can our listeners get a hold of you to find out more about your tech stack and your law practice?
Yeah. So the website for the law firm is just djholtlaw.com. We are on all of most of the socials. My handle should be, I'll try and sneak it into the show notes too.
Yeah,
but
I'll make the show notes. But
yeah, DJ Holt Law, or a version of that on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and a couple others. And that's it.
So thank you, David, for showing us what it looks like when a professional services firm embraces technology with intention. The lesson is clear. It's not about having the most tools. It's about choosing the right tools that deliver ROI and value for your clients and your business. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to From Stuck to Scaled so you never miss insights that help your business grow. And share this conversation with some business leaders who are navigating tech decisions. It might just help them scale smarter. See you next week.
You've been listening to From Stuck to Scaled, growth strategies for small and mid-sized businesses, produced by Optocution LLC. For more information, tools, and resources, check out our website www.redefinepossible.co/podcast.